Politihoot! And now, from a lonely little corner of the Bronx.
We've got to talk about a question that has caused certain people online to experience a full psychological blue screen meltdown. Should journalists, in this case, report allegations of human rights abuse? And remember, for thousands of years, the correct answer to that question was, yeah. But now, apparently, the correct answer is only if it makes my side look awesome, which is not journalism. That is the logic of a PR campaign. It is the moral framework of a casino owner defending his rigged slot machines. Because the actual allegations here, the claims of torture, sexual violence, abuse in detention facilities, those are not the main things that people got angry about. No, the thing that truly enraged them was the fact that the story was reported in the mainstream media, legacy media, New York Times, which is incredible. That is like responding to a house fire by getting angry at the smoke alarm. The real scandal? The reporting. Now, before the internet turns into a digital Reichstag fire made up of entirely caps locks, let's walk through what actually happened. A column by Nicholas Kristof, veteran reporter, Pulitzer Prize winner for the New York Times, alleged sexual violence against Palestinian detainees by members of the Israeli security forces. The piece included testimony from multiple Palestinians, men and women, describing abuse in these detention settings. And Kristof did something extremely important that half the internet missed because they were too busy auditioning for the role of person yelling at the airport bar TV. He said there was no evidence that Israeli leadership ordered these rapes. That matters. The claim was not, Israel ordered rape. It was a claim that dehumanization plus impunity may have created certain conditions where abuse became systemic. Those are two different claims. One describes policy, the other describes moral collapse. And history suggests that human beings are extremely good at moral collapse. We are the species that looked at the horrors of the 20th century and said, oh my God, never again. And then immediately invented radio shows where grown men selling pillows defended war crimes. And then came the response from the Israeli government. Officials announced plans to sue the New York Times for defamation. The article was denounced as false, defamatory, distorted lies, and eventually blood libel, which is where online discourse immediately turned into something akin to a room full of toddlers armed with flamethrowers. Because here's the thing, reporting an allegation is not the same as declaring it proven. Investigating abuse is not antisemitism.
Antisemitism.
And asking questions is not treason. That is literally the entire purpose of a free press. Otherwise, journalism just becomes state media with better graphic design. But some people genuinely seem to want that. They want reporters to function like customer service representatives for national identity. Hello? Yes. I'd like to report a war crime.
I'm sorry, ma'am. That does not align with our brand values.
Now, the Times responded by standing for the reporting. A spokesperson said the column was deeply reported and extensively fact-checked. The paper also suggests, and this is important, that legal threats against reporters can function as a way to chill independent journalism, which is not exactly a radical theory. That is basically the default setting of power. Throughout history, governments have treated journalists the way vampires treat sunlight.
Oh my God, not documentation!
Now, here's the part that the internet will process with the nuance of a drunken rhinoceros. These claims exist in a highly contested information environment, and that means some human rights groups have documented abuse claims. Israel denies systemic wrongdoing. The facts are disputed. The sources are disputed. The scale of abuse is disputed. And whether this represents isolated incidents or systemic patterns are exactly the question under debate. That is what investigations are for. That is what courts are for. That is what journalists are supposed to examine. Unless the new rule is, if a story threatens my political identity, it must be propaganda. Which is not a standard of evidence. That is how you end up with people treating geopolitics like Marvel movies. My side good, your side evil. Everyone's a superhero, no one's accountable, and somehow there's always a city on fire by the third act. And this is where your college reading list comes in. Susan Brown Miller's Against Our Will, Men, Women, and Rape, a book that can shut up the nastiest, sexist idiot you've ever encountered, as it did for me when my little brother and his friends were coming of age and made stupid jokes about raping some of the girls they knew. Shut them right up. In Against Our Will, Brown Miller documented how rape has been used throughout history as a tool of war, of control, of humiliation and terror. And not just in one army, and not just by one religion. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years, which is a pretty devastating indictment of a species that also invented ice cream and violin music. Brown Miller's core point was that wartime sexual violence is often about power and dehumanization. The message is, you are nothing. Your body belongs to us. You are no longer human. And history keeps repeating this lesson like humanity is stuck in a nightmare written by an inebriated screenwriter. Bosnia, Rwanda, Congo, Sudan, Abu Ghraib, Myanmar, Vietnam, every generation says, how could this happen? As if history basically isn't a 5,000-year-old documentary called, oh, look, the monsters were really us again. Here's the core issue. If rape is evil when Hamas does it, it is evil when anyone does it. And if torture is evil when your enemies do it, it is evil when your allies do it. And if your first instinct when hearing about human suffering is, how do I protect my side's reputation? Then you are not thinking morally. You are thinking tribally. That isn't ethics. That is brand management. That is public relations for human misery. That is basically war crimes, now available in your preferred political flavor. Because the moment a society decides, don't report the abuse, it helps the enemy, you are no longer defending justice. You are defending impunity. And history shows over and over and over again that when journalists become targets instead of the alleged abusers, democracies start drifting into something much darker. So remember, my wonderful college graduates of just this week and those of the past, shine a light. So that's all for us today here at Politihoot. Please leave a like or subscribe to the show or leave a comment below. You can also go to our Facebook page at Politihoot and check into Podline FM. You then can record your own voice and leave your own message that we might play on the show. Love to hear what you think.
Politihoot!